This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Well, I have an exciting series for you over the next few days with a guest named Eric Most. He is an expert in stewardship and impact. 17 plus years experience in insurance and nonprofit sectors. He's president for the Rocky Mountain region of the National Christian Foundation, works with givers, business owners, leaders, and their families to provide personalized solutions, trusted education, and reliable service. He also hosts the Generosity Now podcast, interviews inspiring guests, and shares insights on generosity, stewardship, and legacy. He's on a mission to inspire and enable more generosity and more kingdom impact in the Rocky Mountain region and beyond. I hope that you have considered, how you are stewarding the capital or the property or whatever it may be, even your time, right? That the Lord has given you. Our guest today is going to help you to think outside the box and even think about how you can give more with the same say piece of property or capital that you were planning to give anyway. Enjoy the show. Eric, I'm honored to have you on the show. I've enjoyed getting to know you and what you all do at NCF. I'm excited to let the listeners, our investors, know about this as well. I think it can be a major value to them and their family and many other things that they care about as well. So I'm looking forward to diving into the conversation today. I think it's so neat that you and I have a few things in common, around it being adoptive families and just grateful, for your family, and the growth, how you all have done it through adoption, how the Lord's blessed your family and ours through adoption. So grateful for that and the uniqueness of the family property in Roanoke. I think that's so neat. Us living here in Roanoke but now you all are in Colorado. So. Well, Eric, again, grateful for your time. I know the listeners are going to learn a lot from you today and through a number of things that we're going to discuss. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. It really is a joy.
Eric, why don't we get started and tell the listeners a little bit about NCF, the National Christian Foundation, and we're going to dive into a number of things in detail, but what is that? At a high level, and then a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. Yeah. So the National Christian Foundation, we're the largest Christian donor advised fund platform there is. And when I use that term, think about this as a charitable checking account. And so you get the taxable benefits when you make a contributions into that checking account, and then you're able to give to other organizations. A lot of people think about NCF also as like a smaller, much easier private foundation that they do their charitable giving with. And so National Christian Foundation began about 43 years ago now, and by three gentlemen, two that many listeners might recognize their names: Larry Burkett, Ron Ballou, and the third gentleman, Terry Parker. And the whole desire and hope of NCF was to help mobilize resources for the sake of the gospel and getting nonprofits funded in a tax efficient way. And so our founders actually worked with the IRS over 40 years ago to come up with a code that allows for donor advised funds today. And so NCF, we're the largest one of these. There are others out there that people might have heard of, Fidelity and Schwab and things like that. But NCF has a Christian distinctive in the work that we do. And we do it because we long to mobilize resources, get funds deployed for the sake of the gospel. Over the years, we've actually had our givers have given over $20 billion to over 90,000 different nonprofits. Last year alone, we had givers give into NCF over $3.1 billion. And that is made up of cash and complex assets. We actually did over $1 billion worth of business and real estate asset gifts last year alone. So givers gave into NCF a little over $3.1 billion and granted out over $2.1 billion to over 34,000 different nonprofits. And that number, you're like, wow, that's awesome. And there's a gap, but there's a kind of a back gap there. Well, much of that actually came in the last 6 weeks of the year. And so folks will distribute those funds over the course of the next year and next couple of years. So the year before, givers gave into NCF a little over 2.2 billion. And so in 22, they gave 2.2. And in 23, they gave out 2.1 billion. And that's just something that we love to see. And so I got here. This wasn't, I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to be in this role, though, by any means whatsoever. So I was part of a small to large or large small insurance agency in Tampa, Florida, that my father had started. And my wife and I, before we actually got married, we were in the process of gift registry, and I was really demoralized by that process. We went to Crate and Barrel one night, and I got a check, got the little scanner to go around and shoot, all the stuff that you want. And we walked in excited, and I walked out just feeling demoralized, as I said. And I said to Jackie, I said, hey, we don't need any of this stuff. Let's just get rid of it all. And so we deleted the registry. The next day, Jackie went to Macy's without me, and she picked out a bunch of stuff, and she's like, hey, I want you to come. If there's anything you don't like, you could get rid of it. So we were going through, and she's showing me this stuff, and bless her heart, we got married a little bit older in life too. And so we came with a lot of stuff. So she already owned a townhouse, and she had 2 crock pots, and I happen to own 2 crock pots. And she picked out this 3-burner crock pot. And I'm like, we don't need 7 crock pots. Let's get rid of it all. And well, I'm a smart enough man that we kept the forks, the silverware setting that she picked out, and a set of plates. And outside of that, I was mentioning to a friend of mine who worked at NCF. We went to church together, and I just was just kind of complaining about this process. And he says, Eric, why don't you open up a giving fund at NCF? And so we did. And we actually asked people, instead of giving us stuff that we don't need or want, would you make contributions into our giving fund so we can use it for missions? And so that's what we did. That's how I got introduced to NCF. By God's grace, over $2,000 was given to our giving fund, and we used it to train some pastors in Indonesia not too long after being married. And so that was our introduction to NCF. And then in my business world, we grew the business. I like I said, it was a family business, but I kind of was running things, and I took us to a sale and an exit. And after our exit, I made a gift into my giving fund at NCF. I wanted to dedicate the proceeds from the sale so that way they were dedicated for charitable purposes, so I wouldn't spend them. But I also knew that I couldn't, give them away in a responsible manner between then and year end. Literally, we closed it was the week before Christmas. And so there was no way I was going to be able to efficiently give that. We also had a real estate liquidity event after that, our commercial real estate. And I was excited thinking that we were going to get some good numbers, and that whole depreciation recapture thing really beat me up, frankly. I was not as sophisticated as you are and many of your listeners. And so we did that. I was then starting a real estate business myself, and a real estate investor. And a friend of mine knew that we loved Colorado and have a heart of generosity, the gospel and missions. And he said, Eric, you and your wife, you would be perfect to join NCF and be the president of the National Christian Foundations for the Rocky Mountain regions, and tell other people not to make your same mistakes. And so a little over 6 years ago now, I had the joy of joining NCF, and I've had the joy of telling people not to make my same mistakes. And by God's grace, I know that more dollars have been released for nonprofit work and kingdom work than ever would have happened from people hearing about the mistakes that I made. And that's what we're going to talk about, a little bit of some of those mistakes, and how to use the tax code in a way that be more efficient with our giving and more efficient with the funds that God's entrusted to us.
Thanks for sharing that story. That's encouraging, Eric, and just the path that you have taken to get where you're at now. And even thinking back to when you were scanning those, for the wedding registry, and just the change of heart, right?
Yeah.
It's so true, right? You get in there, and it's like, man, we can just scan all these things. Maybe somebody will buy it. And I just love how you were convicted, and you all took action. Like, wait a minute, we don't need 7 crock pots. Who needs 7 crock pots, right? It's just a change of heart there, and you took action. I love that you all did that, and introduced you to where you're working now, right? I mean, NCF, it's so incredible. So I want to introduce the listeners, investors that are listening, to NCF as well, because I know they're going to have some of these same questions, right? And we've received them, and thankfully, you gave me some really good questions for this, just so listeners know. Like this was, he gets these questions all the time, and I've had some of these same questions also, as the listeners know. We have a foundation, and we want to help families adopt. And this is something we've considered. I've talked to Eric about it, and we should talk about it again. But often, Eric, we get a question, or you get the question, how can I make a bigger impact? Right? How can I make a bigger impact, or greater charitable impact? And I just think through NCF, there's probably ways that people haven't even realized that they could have a bigger impact with those dollars, right, that they're hoping to give. Once you get us started there.
Yeah, absolutely. We a little piffy thing we oftentimes say here is, friends don't let friends give cash. Cash is truly the most inefficient way to be generous. And there's way better ways. And that's what we really specialize at here at NCF. And so we love to talk about more strategic ways to get funds into the charitable pocket, and so they can make a greater impact. Because the root benefit to using kind of donor advised funds is that it's legal, completely legal, tax avoidance or reduction in taxes and taxable benefits. And so fewer dollars in transactions that are going to the IRS that end up being able to be transferred into a charitable checking account that you're able to advise NCF on where you want to give to. So friends don't let friends give cash. And so what can this look like? So, step one of, hey, I want to make a bigger impact. And we're going to get into ones that I think are specifically geared to listeners here to your show and into this webinar. But like step one, hey, I want to be more generous. If you're not using appreciated stocks and you have a stock portfolio, a taxable stock portfolio, that is the best way to get started. So if you said, hey, I want to give away, and you can add as many zeros to these numbers as you want, and you can subtract zeros, okay? But if you said, hey, I want to give away $10,000 away this year to different nonprofits, it could be my church, it could be to Young Life, it could be American Heart Association, it could be to help children with adoption work, it could be all these different things. But say, hey, I want to give $10,000 away, or I want to give $100,000 away. Instead of using our cash after tax basis to make those givings, right, and to write physical checks that we've paid tax on. Instead, if you have an appreciated stock portfolio, talk with your financial advisor and say, hey, let's find winners that we've held in our account for over a year. We want to get into the long-term cap gain period and get away from the short-term cap gain, and gift those instead of the cash. And so simply speaking, if you had, say you had Apple or Tesla in your portfolio that you bought over a year ago and it's appreciated, instead of giving the cash, you can actually give $10,000 worth of stock to NCF. So you get a deduction for the full $10,000 on and you don't realize any of that is income. So you avoid paying taxes on that $10,000. You also don't pay any, NCF, when we receive it, we don't pay any capital gains on that. Okay. So you avoided capital gains, you avoided paying any income tax on this. And so let's say you bought it for $5,000 a couple of years ago, and it's now worth $10,000. That's over $5,000 of cap gain that you're not being taxed on. So NCF receives it, we liquidate it, we put it into a charitable checking account for you, and then you're able to direct it to those nonprofits that you want to serve. So it's just a great, easy way to get started. We can then look at other,
yeah.
We can look at other. Go ahead. You get me excited, Whitney.
No, I think it's exciting that this is an option, right? And it's just a different way of thinking. We think, well, we have to sell this thing to be able to get the cash, to be able to give it away. And technically we can give it away before we've sold whatever it is, right?
That's completely right. That's completely right. Yeah. And the key, and as we think about other asset classes, a key kind of thing to keep in mind in all of them is it has to be before any type of especially the other asset classes. Stock is one thing, but if you think about business or real estate or oil and gas rights or mineral rights, these all can be great tools of generosity as well. You just have to do it before you're under any type of binding letter of intent to sell. Binding is the key. The IRS considers this right to income, and so you can't have the right or like the guarantee to income off of a sale. As long as you do it before that happens, you can actually create a great tax deductible situation and also avoid the capital gains.
Nice. So just to put it in layman's terms, ultimately, before you get a contract on something, right, or you sign a contract to sell, you'd have to have this set up.
You have to have it set up beforehand. That is absolutely correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Afterwards, if you get it and like, hey, great, I got this under contract, I'm ready to make a gift now. The IRS considers that a prearranged sale or an assignment of income, and that comes with it at a 200% penalty. And now, just to be clear, also, I just want to give the blanket. I'm not a CPA. I'm not giving specific tax advice. Work with your tax advisors on these things, but also realize that we have NCF where we have over 30 offices across the country. And so you can have a local individual who can help work alongside your CPA and your tax folks, because sometimes these professionals that you have, they're not accustomed to people wanting to give money away. And so they might say, oh, no, you can't do that, or that can't be done. And I can guarantee you it can be done. And it happens all the time.
On that note, Eric, what's and maybe we'll talk about this a little more in another segment, but while we're talking about that contract and somebody's got something ready they're fixing to sell, and how long does it take to set something like this up?
So we talk about this now. You were remind me, were you did you fly planes ever, Whitney?
No, that wasn't me.
No. I know you trained horses.
That's right.
So I don't have an analogy for horse training, but I've got a good one for flying in airplanes. And for your listeners here who've maybe been, maybe they were naval aviators, we can get this done two ways. All of us have taken flights, and we land on a nice long runway on a 737. It's nice, comfortable landing. That's one path. And that would be the path that I would say, let's get 6 weeks ahead of things, and let's do our due diligence and go through the process. And we'll talk about some pieces to the puzzle that have to be completed along the way a little bit later. And so 6 weeks is like a comfortable kind of nice 737 landing at a nice long airport. We do have, and our team of attorneys are amazing, and they can also do it like landing on an aircraft carrier with that hook down, and maybe even miss the first cable, and you're grabbing that second or third cable. And so we actually had some givers in years past, and this happens every year, no matter how many times I implore people not to, that literally start the process on like December the 25th, 26th, the day after Christmas, and say, hey, is there any way we can gift this asset before year end? And by God's grace, our attorneys get it done. And so it can be done, but it feels like, man, you just pulled a lot of G's landing, and it was not very comfortable. So it's not the ideal gift experience.
Yeah. So that's helpful. I just think for listeners to think through, right? You probably know there's a sale coming up well in advance, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to think through this and maybe talk to somebody like Eric to plan that out. Anything else at a high level like this, Eric, you would leave the listeners with before we move on to a different question?
Well, just to punctuate that, just real quick, we have a giver who's a repetitive giver. He's a real estate professional, runs a great organization called Core Real Estate, which stands for KORE, which stands for Kingdom Oriented Real Estate. And they just bought a property actually on the East Coast. It was an old manufacturing plant, and their plan is to do some value add to it, and the plan is to sell it either later this year or next year. And so he said, hey, we want to go ahead and get the conversation started today, so that way we can have everything prepared. And so we're already working with him and his team, his CPA and his attorney team, to do the due diligence on the gift, and literally can go back and forth and create all the documents, the gift agreements for him. And it literally just sits on the shelf. and it just sits on the shelf until he gets much closer to when he's getting ready to sell it. And at that point, he can complete the gift agreements and be done. I really, really encourage that, especially for investors like you're talking to and that are listening to this show, because you all know, like, once you get into the deal, the details it gets crazy, and there's a pull for this and pull for that, and we got this and we got to produce these. It'd be much better if we separate doing the gifting of that asset with the deal itself. And so it just takes the pressure off of things. It makes it that 737. And so spread that out longer. And the IRS also appreciates that. The closer that you do a gift to the time of being under contract, that can be scrutinized. And so the more that we can spread those things out, the better.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I can think about, we get requests from investors often, right, to transfer shares, maybe even just to another investor or another entity. And that can take our attorneys, right, a little bit of time to just get that done. Yeah. Even if it's quick, it still may be a week or two, right? Yeah. And so that would need to be done here. Well, this is great, Eric. Yeah, that's great. How can we make a bigger impact? We want to make greater charitable impact, right? And there's obviously tools that we need to know about, and this is definitely one of them. Thank you for being with us again today. I hope that you have learned a lot from the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope you're telling your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show and how they can also build wealth in real estate. You can also go to lifebridgecapital.com and start investing today.